рабоче-крестьянская революция, о необходимости которой все время говорили большевики, совершилась.
Welcome to Bite-Sized Bios. This is meant to be a mini-sode that will accompany HDTH. Every week, I will pick a person from history and dive into their lives. All right, welcome back to another episode of Bite-Sized Bios, BSB. This is episode number 40. Here we have for you, we're going to talk about Vladimir Lenin today. We're going to find out why he's important and what he did. Very important man to the 20th century. But before we get there, because this is, of course, the mini-episode accompaniment to HDTH, we got to talk about the last week's episode, which is, of course, the part 2 to the Israel-Hamas conflict, and was, of course, the first multi-part episode in the HDTH history. That's pretty cool. But yeah, we really dug into the 40s to the 70s, truthfully, of what occurred during that time in that land. And I think that what we find was, like I said in the episode, one of the more important times in that region's history, I think, as far as if we're talking about anything during the modern times, because that's the way the map was laid out in 1967 is what is still being fought over right now. You know, in what we found in all of those wars, all three of those wars, they never really agreed to anything. I mean, besides the fact that, you know, Israel's going to take some of this land and you guys are just going to like it or whatever. And I mean, I'm just saying, from looking back at it, I'm not just, you know, I've done the research, and that's kind of what happened. And you, of course, we're going to do a part 3. I don't think it'll be next week, because I want to kind of do the then we're going to do MLK, because I want to kind of get, I haven't mapped out, we have about a month and a half more of the 40s to 70s, and then we're going to be done. I kind of want to just finish it off, and then we'll keep it on. But yeah, so Israel Hamas part 2, I thought it was really fruitful in its in the research. I don't know if there's a lot to really cover too much, especially since we're going to continue to go with the next episode. I really would. I mean, I hope you guys checked out at least, you know, the trailer for that documentary Tantura that I was talking about last week. It is mind blowing. I mean, I watched it. I was on the stationary bike watching it, but still, I mean, maybe that's why I felt so exhilarated, because I was like out of breath while I was watching it. But it was just it's amazing, and it's the delivery to me, the vehicle in which it comes, which is so astounding, because it's, like I said, it's in Hebrew. It's in Hebrew. That's why I couldn't show any of the clips, you know, on the podcast, because no one. I mean, I don't speak Hebrew. Most of my audience probably doesn't speak Hebrew. But it's done by them. It's done by a Jewish man, an Israeli man. You know what I mean? Not even just a Jew, like an American Jew. This guy's fully Israeli. And he's just like, this is what happened. And he still believes in Israel's ability to exist and that they should. But he believes in a fully contextualized history, which I think is not something that a lot of people really even want to subscribe to even today. I really don't. You know what I mean? Because it's gruesome. History is gruesome. History, and just like life is. Life is just as messed up as it was back then. It's just now. We have cell phones, but everything is happening the same way when you look at it. And that's what's really, I think, jarring for some people when they really look at and see what's happening. I mean, you look at what happened over there on October the 7th, and you look at what's even happening right now. I mean, you can, all of the things, even down to the, you know, the raping and the mutilation. We've been doing that as a people to one another, as humanity, for thousands of years. We think that because we've modernized our living and our technological advances are through the roof, that eventually we'll overcome this. I'm not optimistic. I wish I was. I wish there was evidence of that, but we're here now, you know, and people, like I said, but that's why I thought it was important to talk about these last couple of wars, because you just sit here and wonder, you know, and there have been a lot of things that have still come to pass over the next 50 to 70 years in the war, in the conflict overall. I'm talking about Israel Hamas specifically, but it does, I think, if it can't be overlooked that what happened during that time in 1967 was one of the more influential aspects of this entire conflict. But yeah, so I don't know if there's much else to cover with that specifically before we go ahead and get on to it. Hope you guys are checking out the TikToks. I am trying to find different ways to incorporate the podcast into the TikTok. I hope people are finding it. If you have found the TikTok and you found the podcast, welcome and thank you for checking it out. Always appreciate all the people that press play here. We're trying different ways to just help people find the podcast. I'm thinking I'm going to do a Facebook thing here maybe sometime. I don't know. But as always, check out all the other socials. We got everything's at HTT Happen. Of course, the TikTok is at HTT Happen 22. 22 being, of course, the year that this podcast started. We started last January, and HTTHappen.com for all the extras. I'm going to try to, I'm messing with it. If you go there right now, I think if you go there right as this is being recorded, it might say under maintenance because I'm trying to get some stuff done. We're going to make some changes here. I'm changing the format and all that stuff. I'm going to really have some ideas to try to just beef it up and make it a little bit more than what it is. But yeah, check that out whenever it's not under maintenance. Yeah, if you give us 5 stars if you like this podcast, if you listen to it and you really enjoyed it, give us 2 stars if you didn't enjoy it. Tell us why you didn't enjoy it, because constructive criticism is always welcome. But yeah, without further ado, as we know what to do, here is the episode. Vladimir Lenin, originally born Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov on April the 22nd, 1870, right? He was baptized 6 days after that. He was the third of 8 children. Of course, he had 2 older siblings. His brothers and sisters were named, Anna, Alexander, Olga, Dmitri, Maria, so on and so forth. A couple of his siblings died in infancy. He was born into kind of an upper middle class family. His family was doing okay. Both of his parents were monarchists and liberal conservatives. Among his siblings, he was closest to his sister Olga, but it would be the death of his brother, Alexander, I believe his name was, who would be the most influential, had the largest effect on him. Old Lenin was a keen sportsman. He spent much of his free time outdoors or playing chess. He excelled at school, was a really smart guy. He would end up getting into college, but he would end up getting expelled from those same colleges too. When he was 15, in January of 1886, his father died of a brain hemorrhage. And not too long after that, I think about 2 years later, when he's 17, his brother is hung by the Russian government, specifically the Tsar, because his brother had gotten into this you could say he fell in with some bad people, depending on how you want to describe it. But he had gotten into this group who wanted to overthrow the government, had plans to assassinate the Tsar. And so before that actually happened, the government found out about it and then had them actually publicly hanged. And so he, watched his brother die. And that, like I said, that was a very profound moment in his life that had, they say is one of the things that kind of, because when you think about it, he was from the upper middle class part of the world. So he, in theory, shouldn't have that many issues with the government. He shouldn't be that angry at the government because the government seems to have done him right. While we're saying the government, it is just, I'm just speaking plain, like generally it was the monarchy. It was the 300-year reign of the Romanovs was what he was currently under in the late 19th century. But, since you're living cool, you shouldn't be that mad. But since the government, once again, murdered his brother, it really does it kind of puts him on the road of like, maybe I'm not all loving what the government has to offer, right? And so after his brother dies, he goes to college, goes to Kazan University in 1887. I mean, as soon as he gets in there, he just starts just causing a ruckus. He gets in these little reform groups, and he's one to protest this, yada yada yada. He gets elected to the group, the head of the university's, I'm going to really mispronounce this, the Zemilachievesto Council. I mean, I've got to be in the ballpark, right? Things go awry. He ends up getting expelled. And what would really be, what I think would be what I would consider when I was watching a lot of these documentaries about him was the calling card for him. He would, throughout his life, start a bunch of different newspapers. Really not really newspapers so much as far as pamphlet distribution. Like, he was that guy who was always writing about some stuff like these are the ideas that I have for the people, and that was the big thing for him throughout his life. Once he would become the Vladimir Lenin that we know. And that's actually where he even got his name, Vladimir Lenin, is because that's a pen name that he was using while he was writing these pamphlets. He had his regular name, but he tried out a bunch of different names throughout the years, and eventually that one worked, and that's the one that we know him by. But yeah, he gets expelled from college. He ends up actually getting put in jail for writing these pamphlets that I was just telling you about, and he gets sentenced to 3 years in Siberia. I think he said with no trial for this same stuff. But I mean, it wasn't that bad when he was out there. Truthfully, he was kind of chilling, because even while he was out there, he was even allowed to take a wife. Like, his wife moved out there, I think, to be in like isolation with him, but so that they could be married. he also would continue to write all he would continue to write all the subversive stuff that got him put in jail in the first place. He would just keep doing, what he was doing, just in a different zip code. But that exile ended in 1900. He comes back. He'd actually spend some time abroad throughout the next, few years, really. Not any time specifically, but I'm saying like over the next, because he would only live for the next 20 to 25 years. Just don't want to bury the lead. He would spend time in Munich and London, places like that, and still distribute his pamphlets back to the home place, but it was because that's the only place that he could kind of do that without being persecuted by the government. I'm not sure if it's persecuted or prosecuted. Let's look it up. So if you're persecuted, let's get into it. Persecuted definition. All right, so that someone's subject to hostility and ill treatment, especially because of their ethnicity, religion, sexual. Okay. So I guess we could say persecuted. I wonder if it's both in this particular situation, because he would have probably would have received some sort of sentence or charge for whatever he was doing, but he was also being persecuted for his beliefs, or would have been by the Tsar, I guess. But yeah, glad we figured that out. Let's get back on track here. So he really starts, he gets involved in the government throughout the time that he would come back, and because what's crazy is he wasn't always in Russia when all the crazy stuff in Russia was happening. Like when the actual Russian revolutions were happening, sometimes he would actually be in other countries, like I said, because it was easier for him to move that way and get his word out. Trying to think of the important parts before we get to like them, because to me the most important part of this guy's life is the fact that he was the first leader of the USSR. He was the first leader of the Soviet Union. He is the fabric that is woven into the Soviet Union, because he is the leader, the initial leader of what it is even before the Soviet Union, because he's a part of what I believe they call the RSDLP, RSLT, I think it's RSDLP. And that was like the initial precursor, truthfully, I would say, before like the actual communist government takes over. And I mean, I had to do a lot of kind of research to kind of figure this out, because Russian history doesn't come easy to me. I don't know. It's really difficult. But he's in there, and basically he becomes the leader of the Bolsheviks. They split off, and basically the two factions in the RSDLP split off and become the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. The Mensheviks are the more left-leaning people. They actually want to kind of do more of a democratized idea of trying to run the government, whereas the Bolsheviks, who are the majority, want to do more of a, we're just going to kind of tell you what it is, and we kind of move. We're going to do Leninism. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to do, whatever people think they might want to do. We're just going to do this. And that's kind of what happens. So they do that, and through a couple of revolutions, we get to 1917, and then he becomes the leader. And what he does when he becomes a leader was one of the things that I didn't know about too much. And there's the conflicting accounts as to whether or not this is on his, like the blood is on his hands, but the murder of the Romanov family specifically, the Tsar Nicholas and all the people involved with him, to me is a big stain on his legacy. And I'll share with you kind of what happened if you don't really know. Is kind of once he becomes the leader of Russia, obviously you don't just there was somebody else who was doing that. So what's happened to them, right? So they get exiled, or not really exiled, kind of just I guess held as prisoners basically, because Tsar Nicholas abdicates the throne, gives it up, like y'all got it, y'all seem to want to do something different. I'm just gonna go over here with my family for real. Because they said he was kind of like he was cool with it, not cool with it, but like he wanted to be a family man more than he wanted to be like a leader. He just got put into it because I think his brother died of like some sort of disease or something like that. But so like he was doing it. But he's out in Siberia now, right? But once Lenin is running Russia, he has to get, because he's like, because basically, and it makes sense from a war standpoint. He's like, if any of these people come back, they'll be recognized on an international stage as being the rightful heirs to Russia. So we have to kill them, or else it would negate all of the work that we put in over the last 25 years. It's really messed up and it's really dark. But what's messed up is that they didn't even kill him right. So basically, they've been moved to a couple different places, right? The Romanovs have, and they end up in Siberia. And so what happens is, right, like in the middle of the night, one night they get woken up and told again, hey, we're going to move you guys again. So go down in the basement, wait for this truck to come, we're going to take you somewhere. So they get them down in the basement. As soon as they get down in the basement, the guy who's like leading the troop or whatever is like, starts reading off this like decree. And he's like, yo, because You guys are, basically stopping the revolution and not letting us do what we want to do. We have to kill you. He's specifically saying this to Tsar Nicholas. And so then he starts to shoot him. Just starts gunning down. This is the family. This is the entire family. It's like 5 kids. And the husband, the wife, there's actually all his entourage, his valet, his cook. I think his cook is there. You know what I mean? Like, dude, like, it's wild. But what happens is first off, nobody dies from getting shot for the first time. I don't think anybody dies because they've got these little makeshift bulletproof vests on that they didn't even know. They've sewn all these jewelries, all these jewels into their clothes. So the bullets are like bouncing off and ricocheting, and they're like Superman. You know what I mean? And so they're like, oh my God, these guys won't die. And everybody's hearing, the whole neighborhood is hearing, because they're just murdering people downstairs. The whole neighborhood is hearing this. And they're like, yo, keep it quiet. Start stabbing these people, like bayonet these guys. And they do that. And that kind of works for some of them. And then for some of them, it doesn't. They have to like beat them in the head with the butts of their guns to kind of finish it off in certain cases. Like, it's really gruesome. This is the royal Russian family we're talking about here. Not just some random people. Not that it would make a difference, but still, they gather them in the basement and shoot them and stab them and beat them until they're dead. And then lie to the Russian people about what happened. Initially, what they tell people. And this is all important because this is the first iteration of the Russian government run by Vladimir Lenin. That's why this to just put it in context. They tell people that, oh, we only killed Tsar Nicholas. What happened to the rest of them? They got away. Or not, they were put somewhere else. Oh, where are they? Oh, we don't really know. No. And then it's like, oh, well, maybe a couple of them, maybe a few others got killed. Oh, well, where's everybody? Oh, we don't really know. We don't really know where their bodies are at. Next question. And so that kind of happens for a while, and it goes on. I mean, literally now we know because we found them. Their bodies were found in 1979, but not actually told. No one told the world until after the Soviet Union fell in 1989. So we found that in 1990, specifically, I believe. So yeah, that's just a wild story that it has to do with Vladimir Lenin. To me, that's what makes it important. That's what makes it interesting. Besides the fact that we know this guy, all right, cool, you did Leninism, you took it from Marx, and you did what you wanted to do with it, and you started Russia, but it's like, what is it that I think sticks in people's mind about the things that you do and the decisions that you make? And it's, like I said, it's been questioned whether or not he actually made the decision, but the point is you were complicit in the action because you were running the government, in my opinion. But so yeah, that's what happens with that. So that was in 1918, so he lives for a few more years, runs the government, actually gets a few assassinations attempts on his life. I think there was like 3. He gets shot multiple times during these, and one of them would be into being kind of what would lead on to his, the health issues he would have, because he would die in 1924. I do believe he was 54 years old. He would get shot 2 times. He would get shot a couple times, I believe, in the last assassination attempt, and that ended up like putting blood in his lungs, and I think the bullet was still left inside of him, and that did some stuff to him. He ended up having a stroke. And was left nonverbal until the last few, I think, months and year of his life, and that's pretty much Vladimir Lenin. All right, that was Vladimir Lenin, Vladimir Ulyanov, if we call him by his real name. It was cool to learn about him. I didn't know much about him before I did any of this. I knew that he was Russian and that they used to have they named a city after him, which I don't think I mentioned in the episode, but yeah. So I wasn't even sure if this would be interesting, and I think the most interesting thing that I found, which was one of the last things that I mentioned, was the murder of the Romanov family. I didn't know how. I knew that they died, but when you look at how they really died, you look at how it really happened, and I kind of even brushed over just because this episode isn't fully about that. I mean, what's messed up, and I'll give it to you now, they had to kill the kids last. They killed the kids last because. I'm not 100% sure, but I mean, it had to do with the fact that they had so many jewels sewn into their clothes, and maybe just their height. I'm guessing is my best guess, because they said they killed Tsar Nicholas first, and it's crazy because I mean, I guess we'll just go ahead and just get into it real fast before the episode ends. That like they read that thing saying like, hey, we're gonna, because he was facing his family, because he thought we're just waiting on a truck, we're just waiting for this to get picked up. We might even go to like England later, like whatever. And they're like, yo, we're about to kill you. And he was like, wait, what? And he turns around and they just like mow him down. Dude's done, right? And then like they kill everybody else. It's like, but it takes time. They're sitting in that little basement that's like, I think they said it's like 15 by like 20 feet wide. And but yeah, after that they just see the kids, like some of the kids like crouching in the corner, like fearing for their life. They just watch their parents and some of their parents' friends get murdered, and then they start trying to kill them. They have to start banning them because it's too loud outside, right? And that doesn't always work for whatever reason. I guess God, I don't know. And then they start beating them in the head with guns. I mean, it's crazy. I'm not going to relitigate it now in the end of the podcast, but still, it's monstrous. It's. I mean, I'm not on there. I don't know if there's a word on earth that could describe exactly what that was. But yeah, so Vladimir Lenin. Find us on the socials, man. HTTT happen for everything. TikTok, HTT happen 22. HTThappen.com for the website. Get all the extras there. You find the videos. Yeah, give us 5 stars if you liked this, 2 stars if you didn't. Tell us why you didn't, because constructive criticism is always welcome. And we'll see you next week with the next How Did That Happen?